I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. And I'll note for the record that Board Member McCafferty is excused. And good morning to Board Members Chappelle and Sticker.
Good morning.
All right, we will begin. Our first item of business is registration department. The chair recognizes Mr. Hassan. Morning.
Signing lead registration manager. In front of you, you have the November 5th, 2024 presidential general election provisional verification summary. A total of 14,390 provisional ballots were cast during the November 5th, 2024 presidential general election. All 14,390 provisional ballots were cast in accordance with Chapter 8 provisional voting of the Ohio Secretary of State's Election Official Manual, also known as Directive 2023-28, Directive 2023-03, House Bill 458, put forth by the 134th General Assembly, Directive 2024-22, expedited canvass and certification of the November 5th, 2024 general election, and a mandatory step-by-step process for examining provisional ballots, all of which were issued by the Secretary of State's office here in Ohio. Of the 14,390 provisional ballots, 11,304 were confirmed to be provisional ballots. This includes 201 provisional ballots that were cast in the wrong precinct, correct location, that are eligible to be remade. 3,086 provisional ballots were rejected for various reasons. And those various reasons are 1,834 not registered, 440 missing acceptable identification, 254 wrong precinct, wrong location, 131 were empty envelope, 126 were non-matching identification, 80 were voted absentee, 68 were missing date of birth, 31 was missing address, 28 was non-matching signature, 26 was voted in the wrong county, 26 had an invalid address, 25 had no signature, 14 had voted absentee with a challenge, and 3 had no printed name. And I would like to defer to the director to discuss a couple of scenarios that we have run across.
Can you clarify, and I know you did, and I just to refresh my recollection, the difference between voted absentee challenge and voted absentee, do you mind?
Sure.
Yeah,
So, a person who voted absentee, we received back a absentee ballot for them, and they also cast a provisional ballot. And so when that happens, and if the absentee is timely, the absentee ballot counts and the provisional is rejected. Versus a person who requests a vote by mail ballot, never sends it back.
right,
And then we count and they come vote provisional. So
Right.
that's what voted absentee is.
sure,
Now, voted absentee challenge is an individual who they return their vote by mail ballot, and we find an insufficiency on the envelope. No ID, no date
Okay.
of birth, and we send an 11S, Secretary of State 11S form to them. So the only way that they can cure their ballot is to complete that 11S and send it back. They did not do that. They appeared and voted a provisional ballot, but again, the only way per Ohio law is that you have to submit that 11S form back to cure. You can't go to the polls and vote
you
provisional
already have a
instead.
ballot pending, okay, that makes sense.
So the,
But how do they end up in the category? So in your example, if they are missing their date of birth or something, how are they in the voted absentee challenge category versus the missing date of birth category?
so in the FC department, when the vote by mail ballots come back and they process them, if there is a deficiency that requires an 11S, there's a notation in the voter registration database that says challenged. And
Okay,
it'll say challenged for the reason.
what, okay,
And so when the assignees team is going through the modules, they would see that note and they would go, oh, this person requested a vote by mail, returned it challenged, hasn't cured it, and so
So it
therefore.
goes into the
rejected.
challenge box, not the voted, not the missing
Right.
ID, okay.
Yeah. So the voted absentee, those 80 individuals actually had a absentee ballot, scan included. It will be included in the certification process.
And with regard to the not registered, there were two voters who are included in that, one of which had some circumstances. So one of them was a voter who voted in Franklin County on election day, a regular ballot, okay? And they had voted here a provisional ballot prior to that during early in-person voting. So part of the process is the provisional verification is we check to see if somebody comes from another county, we check with that previous county to verify that they didn't vote there. And if they didn't vote there, then the provisional ballot can be counted. But in this case, since we got definitive confirmation that the person had already voted, the provisional ballot will not be opened and counted. However, we will do further investigation with it and notify
Yeah, I
the
mean, this is,
election integrity, yes.
yeah, so we might make a referral at some point on this. I mean, I think it's a different circumstance for people who vote provisional because they're not sure if their absentee ballot arrived on time and they're worried if the post office, but you know that you voted already in one county and then you show up again, and that's problematic.
Right.
Okay, so you guys are investigating.
Yeah, and there's an additional voter also included within that, which in our voter registration database was a voter who was flagged from the Ohio Department of Health that they had deceased. And we received a vote by, or a provisional ballot from that person as well.
Wow.
So that too will be investigated further and likely, referred to if
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
those will not be open and counted.
more likely than not.
Yes,
probably
yes, it was a
not.
pretty definitive touch, yeah.
You know, I'm just glad to know that we have whatever, all of our tripwire kind of red flag functions work.
Yeah.
You know, we are able to catch these things and.
Yeah, and I will say, we do our due diligence, there are checks and balances, these types of things are caught and addressed.
The director, if my memory is failing, but the wrong precinct, wrong location, was there a form that people used to, that they could fill out for that?
There,
I can't remember.
there is a form that, when an individual appears at the wrong location, and our poll workers tell them, you're at the wrong location, you need to go to location X. And that person said, I'm staying here and I'm voting. We go ahead and we give them the ballot, and there's something called a 12D form that the poll workers have fixed to the envelope that says, we told them, but they chose not to listen. So that, basically what that does is just says, this wasn't a poll worker error. This was a voter,
Insistence.
yes, insistence.
Did we get any of those back? I mean, I'm not looking for a specific number. Did any of those ever come back?
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
But it's a practical matter because of the legal decisions along all the wrong precinct, wrong location. Those wrong locations don't count, period.
That's correct. Only if, and that's, we had 201 where I'm just gonna make an assumption about poll worker error. Person who appeared at the correct location and somehow they got a ballot for the
Okay.
incorrect precinct. And those
Okay.
are by law, will be remade.
Right.
And those are part of, those are incorporated in the valid number that's on this report.
But that's very different from wrong
Yes.
location is wrong location.
That's it. Yeah.
I did have a question, Mr. Chair. So I don't know if this is the right time, I had asked that, we kind of take a look at to make sure to see the impact of the Ohio ID law in this major election. I know we had been looking at it in smaller elections to see if the Ohio ID law was having any impact, with, people being prohibited from voting or voting provisionally. So I know you might still be in the process, we still have provisionals to count and there's still stuff coming in, or being looked at, but can we just get an update, if you have one, on already initial analysis of it?
Chair recognizing Mr. James.
Good morning, Peter James, Election and Compliance Administrator. Yes, I think we definitely have enough information to answer your question on it, Judge. Just to quickly frame, I think what you're asking, when House Bill 458 went into effect, it started with elections in 2023. And one of the changes that became part of that law was the ID requirements to vote a provisional ballot. And those were changed to match what, now is the ID requirements to vote in person. Previously, if you voted a provisional ballot, you could use the last 4 digits of your social security number as ID, as you can do still with a vote by mail application. That changed with House Bill 458. Okay, so with that as a cutoff, we looked at elections from 2020 to 2022, the ones 2 years previous to the law change. And during that time, as a percentage of all provisional ballots cast, provisionals that were missing an ID, was only, basically came out to be about 0.2 to 0.25% of all provisional ballots cast, so a really, really low number.
That's over that 2-year period you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
so that would also pick up the presidential election in 2020. So like 0.25% basically of all provisionals cast were missing ID. Now post, starting in 2023, before we get to this year's election, for the presidential election that just happened, that average increased to slightly over 3%. So in all elections post HB 458, the number of provisionals missing an ID as a percent of all provisionals cast jumped to about slightly over 3%. And then to jump to look at this election here, I hear Masani mentioning the numbers are slightly, I think I was a day behind his data, but the number of missing ID provisionals is very close to what he just said when I used my calculations. For this election, it ended up being slightly over 3%. So basically, in line with all the elections we've seen post House Bill 458. And then to quickly jump to the rejected portion of provisionals. Previously, 2020 through 2022, we would see provisionals rejected at about provisionals with a missing ID that got rejected were about 2.5% to 3% of all provisionals rejected. Post HB 458, we were looking at an average of between 15 and 16% of the rejected provisionals being missing ID. And for this election here, we're looking at slightly under 14%. So again, sort of in line, actually maybe just a tick lower. So yeah, that's the context of that.
It's now, I'm a visual learner, so could you send me all of
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Yeah, lots of
That was a
numbers.
lot of numbers.
I'll jump in this. But I guess while I'm up here, just mention a couple quick other things. It's not really necessarily related to
Yeah, no, that's great,
to
thank
the
you.
voter ID law, as far as I can tell, but like the number of provisionals that were rejected for not being registered came out to about 62% of all rejections, which is a little bit higher than, like 2020, it was 56%, 2016, 51%, so
So
that was.
you're taking into account the increased number overall of voters in each election?
Yes, it's just as a percentage.
Okay, it's just a percentage, gotcha,
Yeah,
okay.
and I just wanted to shout out real quick, we do everything we can to educate voters on voter
Good job,
registration
yeah.
deadline.
Yeah.
I just wanted to plug one thing that we started using for this election. At the summer SOS conference, that we all attended, I don't know how many of you were in the social media one, they had a breakout where they had a panel, one representative from all the major social media companies, and one of them was there from Meta, and they mentioned how there was something called a vote alert that was available to election administration offices to use. And we had never heard of this. And what's different about this is when we, not using this vote alert, typically when we put out a social media post, it only reaches the people that are following the Board of Elections, that have chosen to follow us on Facebook. This vote alert allows you to pick a geographic area and it will go to every single user, everybody has a Facebook account in that area, regardless of whether they follow you. So as an example, we, ahead of the voter registration deadline, we used this vote alert for all Cuyahoga County. We ended up reaching 100,000 people, which is pretty phenomenal. Like normally we only might reach a few thousand people. So just the ability of this alert to, have this show up for anybody who, lives in Cuyahoga County, gets on their Facebook page within, I think it's like a 24-hour period of when we make this post. We had 100,000 people, which is like, to me, it's just phenomenal. Like, what a great tool this, we ended up using for a whole bunch of things, even like some micro-targeted city stuff ahead of the election. But I mean, considering we have, about 900,000 registered voters, to reach 100,000 of them, in theory, at least had it show up in their Facebook feed. I think it was just a major it's a major win, it's a good thing that we learned, if we learned nothing else from the summer conference, that was a nice thing. So I just wanted to plug that.
That's a good, that's a lot of voters.
It is, yeah, and it's something we can keep, obviously, keep using going forward, so, so,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
You will send that to us, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Weed, Director, any other comments?
So just kind of wanted to, preface, one other thing before turning to the back, page. So there were 1,762 incoming out of county, provisional voters to Cuyahoga County, that we had verified that did not vote in their previous county. There are also 1,198 outgoing, provisional voters. These are voters that have moved to a new county in Ohio, but didn't vote here in Cuyahoga County.
Do we monitor that? It's because that's not on the report. Can you add that to the report
Yes.
going forward, so we actually see it?
Will do.
Thank you.
Yeah, good addition.
Alright, so I wanna turn your attention now to the back page. So the back page, shows some additional information and reasons, regarding voters who cast a provisional ballot. So addition to the 1,834 voters that were not registered in the state of Ohio. There were also 5,555 voters that had a name change and or address change. There was 3,945 provisional voters, that had requested but did not return their vote by mail ballots. We had 102 voters that came in during the SOS mandated 4-day provisional care period, after the election. 77 of those voters, cured their provisional ballot by providing a valid form of ID. The other 25, for whatever reason, they came in, but they didn't have to cure their ballot.
Oh, they thought they had to, but they actually didn't have to?
Correct.
Came in error.
Oh,
So 14% of all provisional rejections were attributed to not having a valid form of identification listed on the provisional envelope. And then below, you'll see the provisional rejections comparison chart. So we have 12% of the rejections that can be improved through poll worker training. So you have wrong precinct, wrong location, missing date of birth, missing address, no signature, among other things. And then 88% of those rejections were based on information that the voter provided, or other circumstances such as not registered, voted absentee, missing ID, not matching ID. The registration department is recommending that 11,304 provisional ballots from the November 5th, 2024 presidential general election be approved for opening and tabulating, and that the 3,086 rejected provisionals remain sealed. Questions?
Mr. Bell?
I just wondered, if we have specific data and maybe that's around, what specifics around, poll worker error, and additional training are required. I mean, I see you've got categories here where, there could be some improvements here, but do we have anecdotal evidence or there's real data around what the poll worker error was? I'm not asking for that today, but I'm assuming that you've identified that these are the areas where improved training would benefit. And improve rejections, that you have some specific data around. Was it from the pink, are they still notating in the pink book or? Okay, so is that how we're determining that there's poll worker errors, or what is it that we're using to figure that out?
So this from a high level, if there is a missing field, if they didn't print their name, print their address, that's just a physical.
Yeah.
Look, when they hand you that provisional envelope, if you do a quick look, you could say, excuse me, you forgot to fill in this field. So that's simple there. The wrong precinct, wrong location. The assumption is they use the electronic poll book incorrectly to look up,
Okay,
to redirect them where they need to go. The other ones though, where I am filling in a field, but I'm putting in my wrong ID, or I'm putting in my that my signature is way different or whatever it is, they wouldn't know that because you only know that through his process post-election. So really, it's at just that level that we kind of look at it.
Missing fields.
Missing field, really,
Primarily.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we've gotten better at that, because this, of course, the goal is always 0, but but that's not realistic. So this actually went down even from the primary to 12%. So one of the things that has helped us in the last couple of years is we did redesign the Filipino envelope. Instead of it being yellow and kind of on there, it's a white envelope with the yellow highlights that we use in a lot of things that draws your eye to somebody to do something in that regard. I know Marlene trains these people like crazy on the lookup tools, and I would say out of the 4,000, probably most of them get it.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I know they're not, I mean, and can't say, that's not your date of birth,
right,
but
Right.
I get it, but, okay, so.
And
missing
ultimately,
fields.
the voter is responsible to fill out the envelope completely and all the yellow portions. But we're saying, look, if the poll worker could take the extra step to look it over accurately and identify a missing field, then we say, we put it under that category,
Gotcha.
you know.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Reed? Oh, thank you, sir. So I move
Yeah.
to confirm that 11,304 provisional ballots cast in the November 5th, 2024 presidential election are valid and should be opened and tabulated. And that 3,086 ballots, provisional ballots cast in November 5th, 2024 presidential general election are rejected and will remain sealed.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, so ordered. Thank you, sir. All right, on to human resources, the approval of the personnel agenda. And I move to accept with thanks for his service to the board, the resignation of Michael Canavino, EPD coordinator in the IT department, effective December 13th, 2024.
I'll second that motion.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Quick question.
Yes, thank you.
Do we have, you know, our IT function is very important, and are we posting for this position? What are we doing about?
so it's
It's a pretty important coordinator role there.
definitely it's important. We will, so yes, we're gonna post, but Tony and I are gonna come at a future meeting, maybe even next week. We're gonna, I think what we wanna do is take the CPB coordinator and make it another existing IT classification, like either the database analyst, we have like a network analyst, database analyst. That's not Robin, that's not Mary Ann, it's below that. But come in at that level with that skill set, because those two current employees assist him. They have better, they have degrees, college degrees in computer systems. And all we ever do is get more technical. And so when we don't have a lot of downtime, but we do have some of that. Having that skill set, I think, allows them to also assist in other things.
So we have some really great internal candidates potentially, is that what you're saying?
This this will probably be external. Because that IT stuff, you gotta do that. So what we'll probably do is next week come with the reclassification request and we'll post it. And again, it'll be an existing classification that we have, which working on the EPBs falls within that parameter. One of them is more database oriented and one of them is more hardware oriented. So it's just a matter of Robin, flip a coin, what's it gonna be, and we'll do that.
Does our vendor still supply support on EPB issues or no?
They do, like, on election day, it's remotely, because we've gotten really good at these. But as we do, upgrades, enhancements, they do, whether it's, it's usually virtual calls, but they're very attentive to what.
For which we pay? Are we paying for this, or this is in a part of the services now?
Yes.
Okay, service, yeah.
We pay service, but it's part of that, these are not additional, billable hours.
Okay,
Okay, makes sense.
thank you.
Thank you. So on the new business, and the chair will recognize either the director, deputy director, whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first. All right. Just a brief update on some of the departments and what's going on here at the agency. So since election day, many of the departments have been working every day since, registration department verifying the provisional ballots. Right now, they're heading over to the Halley warehouse where they'll begin the opening process. Removing the provisional ballots from the provisional envelopes, putting them into scan batches and delivering them to the ballot department on a rolling basis to be scanned and added to the official count. The ballot department then will be scanning those ballots. Right now, what they're doing is they're looking at the number of ballots that were scanned at each polling location and comparing that to the electronic poll book check-ins and making sure that those numbers of scanned ballots matches the number of electronic poll book check-ins. Typically, what they would do in an election would be to scan all of the ballots from all the polling locations, but because our certification period has been shortened by about a third, they're prioritizing locations that might have had a electronic or a ballot scanner machine go down that day, or ones where the numbers they can see are off, and they're prioritizing and addressing those locations first. They will be working, after all the ballots are scanned, they'll be putting together the certification report that will hopefully possibly be available to you Tuesday night, but definitely by Wednesday morning at our next board meeting. But again, they're condensing all this period of work into a shorter period of time. Election support is on track to have all the voting equipment and supplies from all the voting locations returned here to the Board of Elections by the close of business today. They should get it all. And Berman's Moving and Storage has done a great job and working together, partnering with us. And then finally, the poll work department, today they'll be starting their third round of payroll card proofing. They are on track to submit the payroll file to the county fiscal department by Wednesday of next week, November 20th. At that point, the county fiscal department will receive that file. They'll print all the checks, return the checks back to our poll worker department, who will then insert them and prepare them for mailing. So hopefully they should be going out the week of Thanksgiving. So depending on people's mail, they should be getting them definitely by the beginning of December. So that's a brief update on things that are going on. Thank you.
I'm just gonna kind of around the world with various different things impacting our lives here. First is the 1801 Superior Building. Tony and I participate in the weekly meetings. We were at yesterday's meeting, the previous two. We had some stuff going on, so we couldn't be there. But progress on the new building is not going as smoothly as we had hoped. And the issue seems to be between the city of Cleveland, construction permit division, and the landlord and/or public works. And so I actually took a walk over there this week. When you go in the building, basically all the walls are framed. All the steel studs are up, and there's some drywall up. Electricians are there working, but what seems to be the issue is until they can get this permitting issue worked through, and I don't know the inner workings of that process, they can't close up the walls. The walls have to be open, so eventually a inspector can come in and see what's going on and give the check of approval. And my understanding is that they are now on submission number 4 to this permit employee or whatever that is to get through that. So Mike Dever, the Director of Public Works, understands the importance and that this needs to push because we operate, we all know this, on very specific timelines, deadlines, and we can only do certain things at certain times. And so somehow they need to make this work. And so I was talking to Mark a little bit, I want to make sure that Prosecutor O'Malley is aware in case there's some kind of additional nudging or for things that need to happen from a legal standpoint contractually to make this happen.
So the
So,
logjam is city approval now, right?
Yeah.
So can somebody, a county, go
well, here's what's not clear to us.
over there and pick them up and say, hey, give us our permit?
What's unclear to us is, and because we're only given so much, is how much of it is Cleveland and how much is the submissions to Cleveland. So there's probably skin on both.
Before, somebody should be able to figure out what the
Yes.
correct submission is, though. I mean, I can't imagine it's the submissions, but, I mean, this is really disheartening, and I mean, it's like, are we gonna, is the deadline, there was a February deadline, is what I recall. Is that jeopardized at all, or where are we?
Yeah, so next month, about middle of December is when Tony and I with Public Works says, that's when we determine go, no go.
Oh, so it's next month.
Yeah, it has to be because
Yeah.
we have to notify
What's the
people.
February deadline? I thought
So
it was-
February is when we would move in.
Oh, okay, that's the movement.
We would start to move in, cause even where it's at now, originally, we're gonna move in between January 1 and January 15. Then that got taken off the table, and they said, okay, guys, Tony's figured out what can still work. So we came up with, if we move 50% of the group in the middle of February, like week 2, 3, and then we pause, and then the other 50%, or rest comes, week 3 of March, we can make this work. Nobody wants to move in the middle of the election, but we don't have many options here, so we're trying to make this work. Now, well, we're not sure if February is gonna happen. Well, look we're getting to the point where if we can't figure this out,
Oh, we can't jeopardize the election.
we're gonna move in December of 25, because this upcoming year, 2025 is more, this year here, volume, crazy big. Next year, way more challenging because of May, September, and
Yes.
November elections,
Right.
and next year, the year that follows the presidential, is the Cleveland year. That's when their council and president is on. So, there, in the next month, a lot has to be done. Now, if they can get that permitting, all the material is there, and they can start putting that together, but there seem to be handcuffed, and,
We'll find out more information about how this is going, what the resolution's gonna be on this, and.
well, we haven't, so this is like top of the list now for them. I mean, it always was, but it really is, because yesterday, they're like, you sure you can't, maybe move in here or there?
Oh, my God.
No, so I think, like, it was a real wake-up call, here's where we're at. So, we'll continue to keep you updated with that, and,
Is there a way to get all of the parties in a meeting? I mean, is there someone in the city that's working with the county on this? I mean, it would seem like if there's a issue on either end, we should get ahead of this. I mean, 4 rounds of submissions, I mean.
They can all get one room and go like this, but maybe come out with a.
Right, see what the issue is in a realistic timeline, I mean.
because we 100% agree, and so the Public Works and the landlord and the city, the legislature are having all these conversations, and now maybe Prosecutor O'Malley's staff can come in on behalf of the Board of Elections, and see.
But we really don't have, I mean, we are a passive player here, we can't even get a sublease, okay? And we have raised this about 50 million times. To me, if we have a sublease with real particulars and deadlines, when you memorialize something, people tend to adhere to deadlines. But we don't really have any, I mean, it's our fight because we need to be there, and we're really good partners, generally speaking, with both the county and the city. But we don't really have any way to really impact this. I mean, so I'm not sure what the prosecutor's office can do about it.
Yeah, I'm
mean, we don't
not
have-
sure either, but we'd be happy to try to maybe facilitate the parties coming together and reaching out.
Well, that's great, but I mean,
But how much money is being lost in the meantime?
Yeah.
You got this thing, we're gonna go until December, you
Well-
lost a whole year
Oh,
of
my
taxpayer
goodness.
dollars, I mean, that becomes a major issue.
Oh, I don't disagree.
Because, like, Ms. Chappelle said, we're along for the ride, but I don't even wanna get on the train the way they're doing it, until we make sure that this agency has everything that we represented to them in public meetings and in other meetings. Our story hasn't changed, and like you said, next year, there's so many moving parts that it's always a zero fail mission for this agency, regardless of the size and scale of the election.
Yeah, and you can't prevent this from happening, but we definitely will defend ourselves. We will not be the scapegoat for if we can't go till December and they have to pay monthly lease payments, because again, we have been so creative at their request on doing what we can, and we're tapped out, and we're saying this stuff, at the beginning of the year. Actually, We're seeing this stuff in 2023, so nothing new.
Nothing to your point,
Yeah,
Mr. Chair.
exactly.
Nothing has changed from our representations, we've had people stand at that podium and tell us that this is doable, these are the timelines, they work, they're working hard, and here we go again. I mean, it's just really disappointing, but I do think, I mean, we've got to, you know, if we end up staying here because we have to, from an election administration standpoint and making sure we're doing what we have to do for the voters, and we just have to stay here.
Mhm.
But it's just really, I mean, this seems like such an easy issue to fix.
Right.
And if we're tripping over these little pebbles, God forbid we have some boulders to worry about. Anyways.
So that's the 1801.
Yeah.
So things that,
I mean, are we able to request a meeting with our contacts at the county just to ask what their plan is to resolve this? I mean, I think being proactive is the way to go here. We know what the issues are, we're identifying them. We are getting communications to timelines becoming jeopardized. We have to be aware of that. They're aware of that because we made it very clear to them, but I mean, here we are, if we're able to maybe make this happen, I think it's now, it's at this moment now where maybe we can get ahead of this.
sure, we could probably request a meeting with Executive Romaine and Council President, Cornell Jones. We could, bring them together, make sure that they
Right,
understand exactly what the fact pattern is, where we are.
And can we, and Council President Griffin,
yeah, that's a good
and
idea.
get Glenn Griffin to come and see, I mean, get everybody in the room, if we can, or just request that kind of meeting, because I mean, county can't make them do it.
Mhm.
Right,
No,
I mean, so,
Fair,
it's,
yeah.
counties, so,
we will do that.
all right, thank
that's a
you.
good,
Yeah.
that's a good.
And and we will, make you aware if we get a date on the books. I know
Okay.
that potentially maybe not all of you can come because of horns or whatever it is, if there's a decision to be made, but we'll deal with that when that comes.
That's fine, well, I think we're clear what our mission would
Oh,
be, so
sure.
I trust you guys after this meeting to carry it
And
out.
on a positive, there's still time for them to get this together.
Right.
We're not at that, but we definitely are.
There's not a lot of time left.
Right,
So.
That's why moving now is the key, I think that's
Yeah.
good.
So part of again, our thought processes on why it's so difficult next year is the next topic, which is the city of Cleveland ward redistricting. So, Cleveland Council is working through the process, reducing the number of Cleveland wards from 17 to 15. And this is per the 2020 census data and with their charter. So they took up this initiative, they decided to take that initiative up in 2024, and finally try to get this done. But as you all know, we went through this with the suburbs, is they draw the ward boundaries, and then we have to draw the precinct boundaries. And we can't draw precinct boundaries until we adopt ward boundaries. So notification from me has gone out to council clerk Pat Britt with Lane Griffin also notified of that, but it's not a mayoral thing, it's a council thing. That letting them know, giving them some information, we've been trying to get information, Brent Waller has been trying to get what he can, and now it's like everything has kind of become tight-lipped. And so, but time is of the essence, so this is what we're letting council, or clerk of council, Britt know, and council president Griffin, that, we need to have at the latest, like about January 1 is when we need those ward boundaries. And if we get it then, council does not get the opportunity to see what our work is and make comments on the precinct boundaries. If they want that we need that by like December 15th. So we can go ahead and do that and allow allocation of time to meet with them. Want to make sure they understand that, because we will need to get these things in place for the May election, which leads to my next point around the world is Senate Joint Resolution 4 and House Joint Resolution 8, which have both been introduced in Columbus. They both deal, they're basically kind of sister bills, with the state capital improvement program bonds. Those are bonds that the state uses to award funds for infrastructure repairs. And though that program is about to expire. It expires either June or July of 25. And so in order to get these bonds renewed, it has to go to a vote of the voters, which means May, because it's most like both bills are introduced with bipartisan co-sponsors and have a long list of bipartisan people signed on to it. This is going to end up with a statewide election in May 6th of 2025. So where we would have typically a 25% of the county, we'll have a statewide election this in May. So the Cleveland, circle back to Cleveland, where we thought that their first election was going to be September, their first election will be May. These ward boundaries and precinct boundaries need to be in place for that. So at the February 25 board meeting is when I need to come to you with, here are the precinct
February
boundaries.
18th?
February 18th.
Okay.
Here are the precinct boundaries for Cleveland, for you to approve. In order to have those get imported into the ballot layout for Cleary to lay out those things, for Victor to figure out reassignments of poll places, for us to notify voters of all that. So a lot going on with, these resolutions, from my understanding of the process, is that they get introduced, the parties, the chambers will approve it, then the other one goes to approve, and then if both chambers approve, it just gets filed with the Secretary of State. Doesn't go to the governor for signing or any of that, the way these joint resolutions work. So their goal is to get this through lame duck. We probably will see votes on these next week, and it most likely will happen, again, because this is something that has strong bipartisan support. So that leads to,
But the takeaway is,
we have
the May election's gonna be impacting a lot of what's gonna have to get done to make it all happen, given the two.
more reason why 1801 needs to happen sooner than later, because we really won't have time.
Fair enough.
Then we just have two last things. One is Deputy Director Caliber hit on the deceased, alleged deceased provisional voter that we're gonna follow up with. We also have one in the vote by mail world. And we will be reaching out to next of kin there. What the fact pattern looks to be is that the individual submitted a vote by mail application, and it looks like they did complete that. They did it in August. Then it looks like from state reports, they expired a few days before, maybe 2 days before we were able to mail out ballots. I think maybe October 6th. We sent out ballots October 8th because we didn't have that information yet. We then got the information, and the ballot came back, signed October 4th, 2 days before the person expired, 4 days before we could put ballots in the mail. And so when it came back, it says deceased. So we will, again, get a little bit more information to provide, again, try to send a letter out to next of kin, just to get some information, and we'll come back at a future meeting with both the provisional, this one, which an option definitely could be to send it to public integrity for further review.
No, I don't think so.
And then the last thing is just org structure. I mentioned already the EPB position, increasing that to a reclassification, but we've learned a lot of stuff living through this last election, and I think there might be an additional 2 or 3 spots that we might need to add on. Lot to support the absentee process, and especially as it comes over into the new facility and early in person and absentee and confined voting all comes under that one. I mean, right now you have, with the combined departments, you have 2 managers, you have 3 managers, 2 assistant managers, I think, like 8 supervisors who jointly are kind of tackling this. A lot of that goes away, so it might be bringing on, for example, an additional supervisor, program coordinator, but we'll provide our justification as to why we want to add those positions to the org structure.
Question,
Uh-huh.
Mr. Chairman. So, since we're talking, a little debrief if we could on the election and some of the issues. I know you gotta go through a process and we'll come back with lessons learned. One of the comments and calls I was getting were about the scanners that went down. And so if you could talk a little bit about what happened. I think I have some idea, but, you know, Victor had a real good solution when we were talking about, Now, poll workers don't have time to hear from the vendor about how to fix whatever the widget was that disconnected and caused, partially is attributable to why the scanners were down in some of the locations. So there's gotta be a better way while you're thinking about staff and staffing. Victor's solution, which I thought you guys should maybe consider, is maybe there's like just some staff that's designated for these special issues on election day.
Like
where the
rovers.
scan- Just like our rovers, but these folks would be dedicated for, these little hardware fixes where this, I'm told there may be other issues about why the scanners went down, which we need to maybe have you talk about too. But it seems to me, poll workers are overwhelmed at the locations. They cannot be getting calls from the vendors saying, oh, talk to me for 20 minutes and I can tell you how to fix and how to fix the scanner to have it come up. So what can we do with the vendor? So a couple questions, but I want to kind of find out if you guys have determined really what the causes were for the scanner going down. And then what is the fix? What is the vendor saying about it? And maybe as you're considering staffing issues, maybe there's a designated on election day, designated group of folks that are assigned specifically to deal with scanner equipment type goofs that are causing delays at the polling location. So, sorry, that's.
And can I piggyback off our comment too?
Sure.
Another also, I think thing as we do our analysis for moving forward. It's just, when this does go down, it's sort of maybe a training issue, maybe it's a training emphasis. Because it seems like there were some poll workers that were a little unsure how to proceed, how to putting the ballots in that, I think it's a red or orange bag. If they aren't able to be scanned, that was a common
Right.
question or concern. And just making sure that if this, I love that idea about rovers for troubleshooting. Cause a lot of the rovers I know are involved in just signs and where things are and people's behavior at polls, but that would be good, like a technical rover. But beyond that, even from a training perspective, because I think that was a complaint I had, questions, concerns. So I'd like that looked at too for our next meeting.
Sure, so I'll just give some general comments is Marlene is sending out a survey to all the BLMs and BLDs, just specific to the scanners and lines on election day, to get some of that data back from them, because you hear things on election day and trying to get a gauge of exactly how widespread it is it's hard sometimes to determine that at that point. So we actually have already created a simple survey monkey that's going out immediately while it's fresh in everybody's mind to try to get a better gauge on some of this. We will be sending some information to Clear Ballot for them to analyze audit logs. I think there was a mix of things that happened on election day with some of these scanners, and so it wasn't the same issue everywhere. And it's concerning, very concerning. And so one of the things was, there was some message with an icon in the corner that I don't think we've seen before, but almost like the battery low thing that wasn't there. So it was like, well, why is that popping up? Clear Ballot's gonna have the answer to that. We've had something where I don't get this. We test every scanner that goes out, and through that testing, we feed the paper through. But there was a portion, I don't know what this portion is yet, of scanners on election day, and somehow, when the voter went to put a ballot through, that opening had reduced. So it was too tight, they couldn't get a page through there. And somebody said, well, maybe the paper swelled with humidity or something, I don't know, that don't sound right to me. So need to get, some information on that, because we do that test in before we send it out.
There's robust testing.
Oh, yeah,
These,
and
that's
so-
why I don't understand what the problem was.
No, and so everything leaves out of here, and then why some of these things happen in the field, don't understand. Now, so what we are going to, we're collecting that data here, we will do like a lessons learned informational meeting with Clear Ballot, which will be, how are you gonna fix this? What is
Why don't
that?
we have them come into a board meeting and give us the results of their analysis
I like that.
and give us some assurances, this is not gonna happen again.
That's a great idea.
Mr. Chair, because,
Yeah.
this just makes no sense to me, we pay
Yeah.
a lot of money for these machines. And I mean, I just don't, I mean, I got a lot of calls on election day about this.
Sure.
I know Lisa and you and I
Yeah, we
talked about it.
talked, right?
We sure did.
So we gotta figure it out, and to me, the vendor has got, I mean, I get, you know, that, you know, but.
Well, but no, they need
And
to,
and
and
you'll look at because obviously these are logged issues, so there were certain places that seemed to be more affected than others. So I mean, I assume we're gonna also track that as well when
Yes.
we look at this.
so we're trying to pull together like that now. What, this is just my luck, right? So we actually did do some additional training with Clear Ballot on a group of election response technicians.
Okay.
And the things that went down were not part of that training.
This is how elections are, you know this.
I tell them, well, I tell staff all the time, each election ages me dog years. I get 7 years older every time I
Well, you're gonna
election.
go buy the humidity paper.
Oh my gosh.
Not whatever.
And just-
Humidifier for the.
In November, yeah, in November.
So-
So hot.
Yeah.
We will do that election response training again, but now we're gonna take and go look, and you're gonna train on this, you're gonna train on this, because the general rover really not so much want them messing with the machines, but this specialty team, which actually it was made up of our trainers and our training assistants, who really know the ins and outs, but they didn't have some of that, so they're gonna get.
They did not have what?
They had the training, but like, they didn't, there's,
Oh, on these new issues that just popped up.
yeah,
Okay.
so that, like, for example, you can do a slight adjustment on the machine to gently raise it up and have the paper go through. But you have to have a hex key and you gotta know how to do it. Well, that part wasn't part of it because it passes logic and accuracy testing. But guess what? It's gonna be part of it next time. We're gonna order those, everyone's gonna have them, and they're gonna be able to do that if that resurfaces. And to the bag, that is part of the contingency training with the red or the burgundy bag. Some people took to it right away and other ones fought it. So we will, change our training
Yes.
or how we speak to that, you know, in that process, to make sure that they understand. When we send out a whether we send out the notification, so if we know that there's something countywide and we do a push notification, and we're like, hey, go ahead and make sure you get your bags out, and as the rovers bring notices to people, great. But they also need to know for those one-offs, that they should be calling us, but if they don't, and they're seeing something that, look at, until I get the resolution, I know that I do not get in trouble if I bring the red bag, I open it,
Right.
and the ballots go in there, so,
So Clear Ballots in
Yeah.
Summit too, right?
yes,
Did they have issues there?
we've
Let's
only,
find out if
we've
there were
had high
other.
level, but we did hear that there
Let's
was.
find out from Summit and then wherever else that, I mean, they gave us a whole resume
Yeah.
when we hired them of where they have counties our size or
Mhm.
very close. See if anybody else had those issues. That would be just good information to know.
To your point, Mr. Pell, about the rovers, director, deputy director, I'm going way back. I think we had super rovers many years ago, but it might have been 2012. And so you might not be reinventing the wheel, we might be able to go back to kind of something that we did years ago. And I'm a little foggy on the
You're
details.
absolutely correct,
Super
but
rovers.
as we got better and better with the DS200s,
Yeah,
the need wasn't there anymore. And now, but the need is there
Oh, there's
now
need now.
with
so now we
the,
go back to. the
Right.
court.
yes, you can go back there,
Sort of.
but,
That's good.
no, absolutely, cause that was not acceptable.
Well, just if I could, unless you have some more, I mean, the
That's it.
scanner down issue is a big issue, especially obviously the lines got long and these are real issues around the effectiveness of the scanners and if there's some equipment, hardware issues. I mean, we just really need to figure out, and I would like to have them come back and speak
Sure.
to us personally at the meeting about, once they figure out what the problem is,
Mhm.
give us some assurance that they're on top of this stuff going forward. The other issue, just from the election, if I might, is just, and this is a poll worker issue, I was getting calls that, you know, when the scanners were down and people wanted to vote their ballots, and which is permitted, and leave them to be scanned later by bipartisan team, poll workers, including location managers, were not allowing people to do it, or either they didn't know that they could do it.
Yeah.
They
Or they
weren't,
weren't putting it
they
in the
didn't know
bag.
the rule,
Yeah.
and then they did it, you know, somehow they were saying, no, you can't voted and leave it. Now, I get a voter might not want to do that.
Mhm.
But I think there needs to be some more training around some of those rules that really impact lines and alleviating the, I see you, Marlene, writing all this down, and I know you're on top of it, but just it would be helpful to know, and be helpful to know if they noted were there any people notations around issues related to voters not wanting to mark their ballot and leave it for a bipartisan team to scan later when the machines are up. But I think they need to be clear that that's permitted.
Mhm.
And I was getting calls that some people wanted to do that and location managers were not allowing them to
We
do
got
it.
those calls too.
So, okay.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I know we had a 3-page ballot, and I think Summit did, so I don't know if that's also plays into the scanner issues. Not that it should, but just for consideration, we're probably the longest ballot in the state, so,
Well, we covered that. You and I were on that team with them.
yes,
And because we always have more ballots.
Right.
Like it or not, before we hired them,
that's right.
we asked these questions and, oh, no, we're doing
It
this.
should be fine, right,
And you know what, every
I don't know.
election is different, I don't wanna beat them up, they've been a good
Yeah.
partner, but,
sure.
we can't have this. And
No.
so, we need to make sure that they're compliant with their contract. Right, sorry.
Well, but I like the idea of bringing them in, because.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
let us hear from them, they're on top of it, they're aware, they have been good partners, but we're paying a lot of money, we can't have this,
Well, these are new machines. and we
They're brand
want,
new.
you know,
brand new machine,
Yeah,
this makes no sense.
right,
Election number 4.
yeah.
So, and it's a big election, but
Oh, yeah.
I would be curious about the data from the other counties,
Me
they
too.
serve here, they only serve Summit in or is it one other
Well,
county
no,
in Ohio?
they have, I think, 15 customers,
But comparable to our
but
size,
only Summit is
it's close.
close. And
Okay.
Summit actually is using the exact equipment that we have.
Okay.
All right,
Some of the other customers don't have like that ballot box, they have like a little tabletop unit, because they only get
So many.
2 ballots.
Yeah, lucky them.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else,
So
Rick?
that's all I had unless there are any questions.
I have none, my board members.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was just my issue with the scanner.
Well, the chair recognizes Charles C. Drake for public comment. And you may come to the podium, sir. Welcome. And if you would please, spell your name for the court reporter and your address, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to address the court.
Charles Drake, Drake, 7560 Elaine Drive, Seven Hills, Ohio. Well, you've changed some of my topics. I worked for the board for 25 years as a rover, a super rover, a BDM, the whole gamut.
nice.
And my issue has to do with your compensation to us. The Ohio minimum wage in 2020 was $8.70 an hour. In 2025, it goes to $10.70 an hour. The Rovers make $17 an hour from 2020 to today. The state minimum wage has increased 23% in 5 years, and you've not done anything for your part-time workers at all. My other question has to do, as a rover, we have to do a lot of mileage and driving in our cars. We don't get reimbursed for mileage at all. I drove 150 miles this past election in Zone 1, which I don't know if you all know what Zone 1 covers. It goes from Euclid to Hunting Valley, to Woodmere, Beechwood, and to Cleveland Heights, Shaker Heights. That's a lot of area to expect rovers to drive and not get compensated for gas.
Strange.
The other issue I have is we have to, because of the hours we work, we have to pay into OPERS, which is a crock. Why should I pay into OPERS when I'm not gonna get any benefit? You, as the board, with your other boards in the state, should go to the OPERS board and say, unless you are a state or a county or a city employee who is working for the board on elections, we should be exempt from OPERS. Because you have to check the box on a W-2 that says you're covered by a pension plan, and if you're a worker who makes a significant amount of money that does this because of their civic duty, they can't put money into their IRA account because they're in a pension plan. And then the other thing I wanna say is, for the ballot issue, maybe you ought to have some dummy ballots that on Monday night, the VLM or the VLD can run through 20 or 30 ballots and see if they do have a scanner issue before the election's open. And the other thing I have, and this just has to do with what happened was, on Wednesday, the 6th, the retrieval team for Zone 1 didn't get released until 3:30 in the morning because somebody left early and never called. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer, but that's basically my,
Who left early and never called? Oh, you mean,
somebody who was supposed to call Steve from downtown to release us was allowed to leave early and no one followed up. And that's not on Steve Dempsey, that's on somebody down here.
okay, thank you.
What time are you guys done? What time had you closed out, shut it down, everything down? I was just curious.
I think,
You're stuck out there for an hour.
well, what happened, you know what the process is? I'll tell you. When you have gotten all the material back, they release all the rovers across the county, except that you have to keep 2 retrieval teams back, a Democrat and Republican, because if they find out there's been ballots left or there's been a thumb drive left in a scanner, you have to go out and pull that back. And I end up doing it because I work for myself, I set my own hours, and I can sleep until 4 o'clock the next afternoon and nobody bitches. But you know, I'm over 70, I'm getting tired of doing this. I do it because it's my civic duty and there aren't enough Republicans in this county to do it.
Thank you for your service.
But that's it, okay? Thank you.
Thank you,
No,
Mr.
thank
Drake.
you, thank you very much.
All right,
I have a question, just,
Thank you, sir. You're
do we not compensate the mileage reimbursement for road? I'm shocked about that.
So
Yeah, me
what
too.
we do is we pay them $16 an hour, and then we give them $1 an hour for mileage.
But okay, so there's some mileage, but it's not
Right.
the actual.
So they get $1 for every hour that they work towards mileage.
And I thought that we got something, there was some issue about OPER's exemption that is larger than what we can
So,
do. I mean, I don't
That's
recall
like
the
something maybe the
details, but
state house has to take care of, is that
Yeah.
something we could maybe?
so
there's a reason why our employees or people that work for us, I don't wanna speak out of school, but there's some issue. We get a whole,
the OAEO has been lobbying literally for years for OPERS to adjust, to increase their thresholds. We used to be able to pay rovers in a similar manner that we did, forwarders, like stipend.
Right,
And then different state agencies came down and said, no, you can't do that. You have to have OPERS deductions because they're making more than $600 in a year. And you have to do full taxes and you have to do all these other things. So then what happened is, and then we ended up putting them on payroll. This happened maybe like 2 years ago. Because of what OPERS says you had to do and what the state,
if they're on payroll, why don't they get the mileage reimbursement that everybody else gets then?
like, we don't give mileage reimbursement to trainers, we build it.
Oh, we
into-
don't?
No, we build it into their hourly
Okay,
rate.
all right, I didn't know.
So, yeah, so we do that, and when we went for our current budget, we saw increases and got decreases in our funding, so,
Yeah,
you know, so we did want to, do
this
some
is
of those
something we
things.
could work with the county on, helping to compensate in this area, and then maybe work with the state on clearing up the overs.
Yeah, because
and our
the,
trade association, I mean, they would have the, well, I mean, I guess it's only the largest counties that really are using the rovers in the way that we so we may be a minority, but, they have been advocating lobbying for that, right?
they definitely have, because the one thing that they were able to get pushed through is that if you have an election year that you have 3 elections, the $600 threshold for OPERS will increase to 1,000. So that makes it a little bit easier, but it's still not enough. So what the association is asking for is something like a $2,500 type threshold to really make it so you don't have that. And if we don't have that, then we can look to either compensate the way we do, but you don't have the OPERS deduction, which the employee, I think, is 10% is what is withheld for that. So it's, again, we get it, and but it's not, it's something that the OAEO is lobbying for. But it's, and I even think the County Commissioners Association is lobbying, because they have to do the match. So if they are able to get that increased,
Oh,
then,
yeah.
because it costs them more money too,
Oh, that's
to
interesting.
do that. So
What is it?
they do 14%. So now, I will say that, again, you have to put a little effort into it. A person can request a refund of their OPERS contributions when the assignment is done.
Oh,
So
really?
the 10% that they do, but you have to go through, put the
Yeah,
paperwork in,
Process,
it comes.
it's a lot of work to do.
It
It sounds like we alone can't make some of these changes, but we certainly could be in some discussion
Mhm.
about
Yeah.
it.
Definitely.
This, I wasn't aware that's this issue, but, okay,
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, no.
Excellent. Will there be no other business before the board? I move to go into recess.
I'll second for that motion.
Second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
All right.